Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. On today's episode of the show, we're going to be talking about the latest film and TV news. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and I'm joined on today's episode by Slash Film writers Hoai-Tran
Hey, everyone.
and Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
All right, so yesterday we had our big Snyder Cut discussion. So, Chris, let's kick things off today on our news show talking about the Snyderverse. What can people expect in terms of potentially more entries in Zack Snyder's vision?
They can expect nothing. I was hoping that the Snyder Cut movement, after it got what it wanted, would take at least like a few days to, revel in their success. Because, in the end, they won. They got what they wanted. But there are still members of that movement who want more. They want Zack Snyder to basically be running the show when it comes to Warner Brothers DC movies. And there's been some renewed hope that with the Snyder Cut now out there, and with critics being surprisingly positive towards it, including myself, that there was hope. There was hope that Warner Brothers would say, you know what, we're bringing Zack Snyder back. But that is definitely not happening. I shouldn't say definitely, because there was a long time when we were all like, there will definitely not be a Snyder Cut. Mm-hmm. And that happened. So maybe someday that'll happen. But as of right now, Warner Brothers is making pretty clear they really have no plans for that. Ann Sarnoff, who's a CEO with Warner Media, gave an interview with Variety, and during the interview, she was asked multiple questions about this very topic. And one of the questions was, are you going to restore the Snyderverse, as it's called? And she said flat out no. She said, I appreciate that they being the fans, love Zack's work, and we are very thankful for his many contributions to DC. With that comes the completion of his trilogy. And that trilogy would be, of course, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and now Justice League. She continues, we're very happy we've done this, but we're very excited about the plans we have for all the multidimensional DC characters that are being developed right now. She was also asked if there was any chance they were going to have the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. For those who don't know, Suicide Squad, which is just an awful movie, went through a lot of behind-the-scenes turmoil. Long story short, they premiered a trailer for it at Comic-Con. The trailer was a really good trailer. It was funny. It was upbeat. It was sort of lighthearted. And unfortunately, that did not reflect the tone of the film. The film was, by all accounts, much darker. And Warner Brothers saw how much everyone loved that trailer, and they were like, uh-oh, we got a problem here. And so they actually brought the company who edited the trailer in to re-edit the movie and try and make it more fun, which... no bones about it, that failed because the end result was a really bad movie. But with the Snyder Cut movement, there's been some talk of, well, now they should do this for David Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad. And Ann Sarnoff said, again, I quote, we won't be developing David Ayer's cut. And that's it. That's literally all she said about that. So, in other words, there's, it definitely seems like the Snyderverse, if you want to call it that, is over and done with, and Warner Brothers is moving on. They're trying to do new things with their DC characters.
So what do you think about that, Chris? We had this whole long discussion yesterday about the Snyder Cut, and I think we came down on there's a bunch of good, interesting stuff in it. It's an interesting experience overall. Maybe the whole thing wasn't really for us. We had a lot of problems with it too, but maybe if you can, try to separate the loud fandom from it and just hone in on your own perception here. Would you have wanted to see more stuff from Snyder? Let's also throw in that it would just to sweeten the deal a little bit. Let's take that nightmare verse, that sort of alternate timeline, off the table and say that he wouldn't have only done something in that. Would you have been interested in seeing Zack Snyder tell more stories in this universe?
That's an interesting question, because if he was going ahead with his nightmare sequels, it would be a flat out no, absolutely not. And I also really don't like the idea of Zack Snyder being sort of like the person overseeing the entire. It sounds like the fans of Zack Snyder want him to be like the Kevin Feige, or Kevin. How do you say his name?
Feige.
Kevin Feige of DC, and I really don't want that. I just don't think Zack Snyder is the right person to be steering these movies. Honestly, I said this on the Snyder Cut podcast we did, but he's great at visuals. I just don't like his interpretation of these characters. I said the other day he doesn't understand his characters, but I'll walk that back and say that's not fair because these characters have changed over time, and there's no real one interpretation. I feel like these characters are flexible in the sense that everyone is entitled to their own interpretation of them. I just don't particularly like Zack Snyder's interpretation, so I would much rather them do their own thing. Honestly, I would much rather them give up entirely on connected movies and do more interesting one-off things. Joker has its flaws, but I like the idea of these standalone movies that don't have to be beholden to something that came before it. I rewatched Aquaman last night because I was just in the mood for it. And that movie is so great, but there's even a part in that movie where Amber Heard is like, "You defeated Steppenwolf," and just hearing that line immediately took me out of the fucking movie because I don't need this to be connected to anything. Just let it be its own thing. I know, I don't know. Maybe I'm in the minority there since shared universes are so goddamn big, but that's how I've always felt.
HT in the knowing that I very well could be stepping on a later conversation that we might have in the water cooler later this week. Have you had a chance to watch the Snyder Cut yet?
I've only watched half of it so far.
Okay, all right.
I don't know if you saw my tweet on Sunday night at 10 p.m., but I hit play literally at 10 p.m.
Oh, God.
And I got halfway through and I was like, all right, I'm going to take a break now.
Okay, well, this is kind of maybe the best personal or the best possible outcome then. So do you plan on finishing it before we have our water cooler episode?
Yeah, I plan on finishing it. So I was going to, I just need to take it in parts, which I'm happy they divided it into chapters for that. So
yeah,
I retain my, not retain, but hold back my opinion on it until I finish it.
Okay, I look forward to hearing what you think. All right, let's go into our next story, which is just a couple of release date shifts and some interesting Disney news. I guess the most relevant for our listeners is probably that Black Widow is actually going to be coming to Disney Plus and theaters on July 9th. So it was originally supposed to come to theaters only on May 7th, but Disney has now changed its tune a little bit, and it is going to be a Premier Access title, which means you have to pay whatever it is, $30. I don't know if they're locked in, if Premier Access always equals $30 or if that pricing is ever going to change. I think thus far it has only been $30, but it'll be curious because this is the first Marvel movie that will be going, getting this treatment, going straight to Disney Plus and also playing in theaters. And I feel like if Disney is going to experiment with changing the pricing in that Premier Access tier, this seems like the movie to play around with that a little bit. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. That's pure speculation on my part. Cruella, the Emma Stone-led movie, is also going to be getting that same hybrid release treatment. That movie is going to be coming to Disney Plus and theaters on May 28th. And then Luca, which is the new Pixar movie, is going to be going straight to Disney Plus, no theaters, it sounds like, on June 18th. So that one is going to be basically how Disney Plus handled Soul, where you're not going to have to pay extra to see that new Pixar movie. So that's nice for people to sort of have that as like a quote unquote freebie there. And then there are a handful of other release date changes. I won't go through all of those here, but you can click on the news article in the show notes for this episode and get more details about that. The only one thing that I'll mention is that Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is another Marvel movie that is supposed to be coming out this year, it was actually supposed to be coming out in July, has been bumped back to September. And then Eternals, which is the third and final Marvel film that's supposed to be coming out in 2021, seems to thus far have retained its release date in November. So I think that one's supposed to come out on November 5th of this year. So Black Widow on July 9th, and then Shang-Chi on September 3rd, and Eternals on November 5th, if you're paying attention to Marvel movie stuff. So I just wanted to give everybody that update. And again, there's more details here in the actual article itself, but you can click over and read that if you choose. So let's go to our next story, which involves more Game of Thrones spinoffs in development at HBO. HT, tell us about that.
Yes, there are 3 Game of Thrones developments, spin-offs in the works at HBO. They're developing 3 new projects set in the world of Westeros and Essos and maybe beyond. 3 series are 9 Voyages, aka Sea Snake, Flea Bottom, and 10,000 Ships. So I'm going to give a little bit of background. 9 Voyages refers to the Great Voyages at Sea made by Lord Corlys Velaryon, who is a distant relation of the Targaryens. They're also descended from ancient Valyria, like them. And it's his journeys from Westeros to cities like in Essos, like Lys, Tyrosh, and Myr, and far off fabled lands like Yiti and Lang, and the frozen seas north of Westeros. So it's a kind of a classic seafaring fantasy, and it's the project that's reportedly the farthest along. The Mentalist creator and Rome co-creator Bruno Heller is reportedly involved in this project alongside Martin. The other 2 projects, Flea Bottom and 10,000 Ships, are more in very, very early development. The Flea Bottom one is set in the maze-like slum of King's Landing. We've seen it featured prominently in early seasons of Game of Thrones, but there isn't any storyline or creative team in place for that one just yet. And I can't really imagine that one being really interesting either, even though it is known for being very maze-like, labyrinthine type of setting. That I feel like it would be difficult for whoever takes on that project to resist going into the keep, for example, because it's just like right there.
Yeah.
And the last show being explored by HBO is 10,000 Ships, which refers to the journey made by Princess Nymeria and the surviving Rhoyners after their defeat in the ancient war with Valyria in Essos to Dorne, about 1,000 years before the events of A Song in Ice and Fire. And Princess Nymeria was this great warrior queen who weds herself to the Martell family and unites Dorne to become the ruling sovereign and builds up the kingdom to be the one that we know in Game of Thrones. You might know her character as the one that Arya names her wolf after, and she's one of like these legendary like Dornish queens. There was, I remember, back when I was watching Game of Thrones, there was like one of those animated Game of Thrones like little Blu-ray sequences. Do you remember those, Ben?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
There was one that was like narrated by Pedro Pascal, and it talked about like the history of Dorne and Princess Nymeria specifically. So that one I think is like the most intriguing. But I do think that the seafaring one, 9 Voyages or Sea Snake, has potential too. But yeah, it seems like HBO is really exploring like all the hidden corners of George R. R. Martin's world, and it's becoming intriguing. I remember when this story hit, there was some confusion because of the title, like the subtitle Sea Snake for 9 Voyages, and I think it was like either Variety or Hollywood Reporter who put a picture of the sand snakes. The sand snakes do not feature in these spinoffs, and I just wanted to, clarify that.
Yes.
Man, what a bunch of boneheads. I hope they're...
So, and there was also a lot of criticism over that because of how this Game of Thrones series botched their depiction of the Sand Snakes to begin with. One of the reasons that I stopped watching the show, because I was really disappointed. I really love the Sand Snakes, and then they just completely dropped the ball on them. But hopefully, if they do one that's more Dorne-centric, like the 10,000 Ships one, it will leave behind some of the troubling sort of ethnic problems that Game of Thrones had in the past.
Yeah, certainly. And Flea Bottom, just for, you mentioned the maze-like sort of, this is like the area that's right outside of essentially the castle in King's Landing. And that's Flea Bottom specifically, I think, is supposed to be like the poorest part of the town.
Yes.
And I want to say that, what's his name? Sir Davos, the Onion Knight, came from there. And then also one of the other spin-off shows that or I guess prequel shows that they're developing, which is Dunk and Egg. The character of Dunk, Sir Duncan the Tall, is this sort of like wandering young knight who he's like a squire who basically gets turned into a knight basically in the very beginning of those series of stories, and he is also from there. So I wonder if there's if they're thinking about connecting, having during the Flea Bottom show, you could have Sir Duncan the Tall walking by or something in the background, like those little connections. I'm not sure
Yeah.
exactly what year that's supposed to be set, but
I don't know how you would make an interesting story out of Flea Bottom, though. I mean, it's just it is a facet of Westeros that is little explored apart from various characters who are from it. Gendry Baratheon is also, or Gendry Waters is also from there. He's one of the bastards births by Robert Baratheon, but it's just kind of those. I don't want to say it's not as interesting as it's not what people came to Game of Thrones for, basically.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of like how God, I can't remember the name of the show, but it was like it was set in the world of DC, and Alan Tudyk played like Bruce Wayne's cousin or something, and it was on, I think it was like an NBC sitcom,
Like
basically.
Powerless or something.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it was sort of like set in the world of superheroes, but it was kind of dealing with characters who were, didn't have anything to do with superheroes, and it's just like them cleaning up the messes and like working at like an insurance company or something like that. I didn't actually watch the show, but this sounds kind of like it could be something like that, where it, maybe it follows like a gang of thieves or something in Flea Bottom, who's always like messing with the palace guards or whatever. And like the entire show is set in the shadow of these way more important quote unquote events that are taking place, that, and it's about these people who just have to like deal with these decisions that are made from upon high, and like, all of this stuff, all of these decisions, end up coming back and affecting them in some way. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I feel like this is the least interesting of them. I was just, when you're talking about how could there be a Flea Bottom show, I'm racking my brain trying to come up with some way for that to be interesting, and that's the best I can do on short notice. So, all right, well, let's move on to our next story, which involves Regal Cinemas, and they are going to be reopening their doors. And then I guess arguably even more interesting than that is what Warner Brothers plans to do about its whole HBO Max experiment next year, when the 2021 experiment seemingly comes to an end. So, Chris, what's going on there?
Well, Regal Cinemas are planning to reopen in the U.S. on April 2nd. In the UK, the plan is May 17th. And that would make Godzilla versus Kong is kind of like going to be the first big blockbuster back on the big screens at Regal Cinemas. But with this news comes also the news that Cineworld, who owns Regal Cinemas, just signed a deal with Warner Brothers. Let me get the actual text here, so I get it right. The deal will, quote, see the number 2 global exhibitor show the studio's 2021 theatrical on HBO Max day and date titles in the U.S. as of their theatrical release. Then, beginning in 2022, Warner Brothers theatrical films will have a 45-day window of theatrical exclusivity at Cineworld's Regal chain. In other words, this thing that Warner Brothers is currently doing, where all of their 2021 theatrical releases are also hitting HBO Max the same day they hit theaters, is definitely going to be over in 2022. We all kind of speculated when Warner Brothers first announced this that it was going to be like impossible to put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak, that once they open this door, it's going to be hard to go back. But as of now, Warner Brothers really is planning to do that, because they have to have an exclusive theatrical release for at least 45 days. They could always, I guess, in theory, put these movies on HBO Max after 45 days. I don't know how they're going to let this play out, but as of now, this experiment will definitely be ending in 2022.
I was going to ask about that. Like the HBO Max thing, was there any indication that, right after that 45-day window, these titles will drop on HBO Max at that point? Or do you think it might go to like paid video on demand at that point? Or what do you think? I mean, I guess if we don't have any details, it's all speculation, but just like, what's your read on that?
I mean, if I had to speculate, I would say maybe they would drop them on HBO Max because they've already experimented with that. But I don't have all the details on like what deals HBO or Warner Brothers has with other theatrical chains, because like this is just Regal and Cineworld, so they might have a completely different deal with AMC and all that good stuff. So I really don't know. I mean, ideally, they have HBO Max. They want more subscribers. I think it would make sense to be like, okay, it's been 45 days. Now you can get this on HBO Max. But at the same time, I worry that and when I say worry, I mean I don't care because I haven't seen the game. But I worry that they would like sabotage themselves in a way, because some people will be like, why would I go into the theater when I can just wait, a month and it'll be on HBO Max, a month and a few days. So I don't know how they're going to play that.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because, I guess if they were to not put them on HBO Max after that 45-day window and put them directly into, a PVOD situation, that would really be like closing the door dramatically on this 2021 experiment, right? But I think if they were to do the HBO Max thing right after 45 days, then it would at least sort of like ease audiences who may have grown comfortable with seeing these top tier high quality sort of like quote unquote premium movies at home. It would ease that pain of that transition a little bit, from instead of quitting cold turkey. It would basically just be like, all right, well now it's out in theaters if you want to go see it for the next whatever month and a half, and then it'll come to HBO Max. And like you said, I think that makes sense in the long term for like driving subscribers, because that seems to be all anybody cares about right now, is like subscribers for all of these different streaming services. So I hope for the ease of use and customers' sake overall that they end up just doing a 45-day theatrical thing and then just dropping it straight on HBO Max. But I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. All right, we have two more news stories to talk about, and HT, you're going to cover both of them. They are both superhero related. So why don't you start off with the latest on a Zatanna movie?
Yeah, Warner Brothers has tapped promising young woman writer-director Emerald Fennell to write Zatanna, their new comic book movie and latest female-led DC superhero film, and the first one to be the solo female superhero movie after Wonder Woman. So Emerald Fennell has been tapped to pen Zatanna, which comes from Warner Brothers DC Films and J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot Productions. The role of Zatanna has not been cast yet, nor has a director been named, but this is a big, exciting new project for Emerald Fennell, whose promising young woman has become like a great Oscar underdog, a really surprising Oscar underdog actually, because her film is good, but it wasn't considered like as much of an awards contender as it has been in the past couple of weeks. So good for her, and she obviously has a real talent for tapping into female rage and female vigilantism in some ways. So this seems like an interesting and exciting new step for her. Zatanna, for those who don't know, is a magician, sort of sorcerer character who is considered one of the most powerful sorcerers in the DC universe. She inherited her magical abilities from her father, Giovanni Satara, who was a Golden Age comic book hero. And she's been frequently connected to the Justice League as well as Batman. She had her live-action debut in Smallville, played by Serinda Swan, but this will be her first big screen appearance.
Yeah, I think Zatanna is one of those characters that popped up a lot on the potential roster for a Justice League Dark movie that was being bandied about for many, many years. I think Guillermo del Toro was attached to direct that at one point, but I don't think that ended. I'm not exactly sure what the latest is on that project. I feel like it's changed hands so many different times.
Yeah, it hasn't technically been scrapped as far as I know. I was looking into it because Zatanna getting her own movie is kind of a potential hint that maybe a Justice League Dark movie could be on its way at some point, because she is one of the founding members of that team. And Justice League Dark is like the team that essentially focuses more on supernatural cases versus like the main Justice League, and it has characters like Zatanna, Constantine, other characters who I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah,
I think like Swamp Thing might be in
Swamp
there.
Thing, exactly. So there's potential that this could be like opening the door for a Justice League Dark, which has never really been off the table. It was in development for many, many years. Guillermo del Toro was attached back in like 2015, but left the project soon after because it just kind of stalled, and now it's just like in that development hell phase, but hasn't technically been scrapped yet.
So before we move on to the last story, you mentioned a little bit about like Emerald Fennell and the way that she has, she has like some experience writing female vigilantism and stuff like that. What do you think about this as a career move for her, HT?
I saw something really interesting on Twitter about how the only promotion for successful art house or indie directors now seems to be a Marvel movie, which is a really cynical way of saying it. And I kind of agree with that too. But I do think that this is a exciting sort of stepping stone, if not just like a nice blank check for her to get a big blockbuster project under her belt and then do whatever she wants to do. Because I do think she's a really talented writer and director. She also wrote and showrun Killing Eve season 2, which I admittedly haven't seen, but Promising Young Woman is really sharply written and a real just like dynamo of a movie. So I am interested to see what she has in store next. It is kind of almost a little disappointing that it's going to be a superhero movie, but it's Zatanna and a character that hasn't really been explored much on the big screen, so she could potentially have a lot of room to just do what she wants with her, and
Yeah.
maybe go a little bit weird, go a little bit dark and supernatural, and I especially with like the magical components could potentially give her a lot of freedom to do something unexpected, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's like the most exciting thing about this is that, audiences don't really have a big connection to this character. So I think there is a ton of freedom, and hopefully that will mean that this won't be just like as formulaic as as it might be in a worst case scenario. So let's go to the last story of the day, and that involves so Zatanna was DC. Let's go to a Marvel related show that is in early development on Disney Plus.
Yeah, over the aisle at Marvel, Disney Plus is reportedly in the early stages of development for a Hawkeye spin-off series about Echo, who will be played in the upcoming Marvel series by Native American actress Alaqua Cox in her first big screen role, or not big screen, in her first screen role. And Echo is a deaf Native American superhero with the power to copy other person's movements or fighting styles, and she was the original owner of the Ronin title, which is the super like the rogue sort of title that Jeremy Renner's Clint Barton takes on in the comics, but also you can see it at the beginning of Avengers Endgame after he lost his family in the blip and goes rogue on this mission of revenge,
Interesting. I did not know that.
killing a bunch of people of color or something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Not
Forgot
great.
about that part. God.
Yeah, but Ronan is a character that has frequently been associated with Hawkeye. He takes it on when he separates from the Avengers. But yes, Echo is the one who originally took on that mantle before becoming Echo. Her name is Maya Lopez in the comics. But there's currently a writer's room being assembled for this series. Eaton and Emily Cohen have been set up to write and executive produce this series. Marvel Studios is producing, but it's still in very early stages as of yet and being explored. But and also shouldn't be noted that Hawkeye hasn't even finished shooting yet. So it's kind of, they're already planning this spin-off as they're in production for Hawkeye currently, which feels very much in the lines of Disney. Disney having launched several spin-offs off of The Mandalorian, like season 2 finale. So it seems like it's kind of par for the course now for any Disney Plus series. But I admittedly don't know much about Echo. I have great familiarity with the Hawkeye comic written by Matt Fraction and David Ayer. I don't know how to pronounce his name. And I adore that comic, and I know that comic has major inspiration on this series, but it seems like the series will also be taking a lot of different parts of Hawkeye's past and other sort of background in the Marvel comics, which I'm not as familiar with, hence like Echo and other characters. But I guess I can't really say much about her. I feel like I feel a little bit let's see, not anxious, but skeptical now that they're not doing just a straight adaptation of the Matt Fraction Hawkeye, because I adore that series. I think it's perfect, and I kind of wish that they stuck to that irreverent, almost comedic story. But it feels like now it's becoming more about like, oh, the world, and oh, it's Hawkeye and his tragic past and stuff. But I do think it is interesting and exciting that we're going to be seeing potentially see a deaf superhero take the lead. The deafness is actually something that Clint Barton has struggled with in the comics in the past. It played a big part in Matt Fraction's Hawkeye as well. So it'll be cool to see two deaf like disabled superheroes share the screen in Hawkeye, and then have one who actually has like deafness as a major part of her character take the lead in her own series. So that's exciting, at least.
Yeah, that sounds kind of cool. And just I guess macro, like big picture kind of thing. It sort of sounds to me like a way for Disney and Marvel to ease Jeremy Renner out of the picture and like have this be a show that stars, whoever they end up casting to play Echo, and
They
like
already cast
bringing.
someone.
Oh, they did. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry
Alakla
about that.
Cox, who will appear in Hawkeye.
Okay. So yeah, Cox, and then maybe like a Haley Steinfeld or something could pop up in this show and maybe lead into that Young Avengers project that you've been sort of theorizing about for a little while. So that might be cool too. But yeah, that's Chris. Do you have any thoughts about either a Zatanna movie or a Hawkeye spinoff show here?
I don't know. It's the Hawkeye thing is really hard for me to comment on because I have no familiarity with the comics, and it just seems weird to me that they're already like, we got to plan a spinoff for this show that has not yet finished filming. But I guess that's the Marvel way. As for Zantana, I'm one of those. I'm the kind of outsider here because I do not think Promising Young Woman is as good as everyone says it is. I don't think it's bad. I continue to be very surprised that it's having such a successful award season run. So I guess that's really going to depend on like if Emerald Fennell is going to end up directing it and who they cast as Zantana. So that was a lot of words for me saying I really have no opinion. I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
Chris, I will say I think you would like the Matt Fraction Hawkeye series.
Everyone says that's really good. I don't know. I have this. It's not I dislike comics. I just have trouble getting into them for some reason. I don't know. I can't explain it.
That's okay too.
I'm not right for this world, is what I'm saying.
That's a definitive run, though, HT, right? Like it has a beginning, middle, and end?
It has a beginning, middle, and end. So it's like its own little story kind of in its own corner, too. So it's not really related to any of the ongoing Avengers stuff either. So that's why I enjoy it so much. But, my first priority is to get Chris to read Sandman anyways, because I know that's way, way more up his alley. I
want to read that, but like the collection, it's like over $100, and I can't justify that. Come on. I'm a film critic and freelance writer. We can't afford things like that.
Yeah, and then I'm sure your never-ending quest to convince Chris to watch anime also takes precedence.
I have been watching anime, so.
Oh, you have?
Well, I watched Weathering with You, and I just watched Garden of Words the other night.
All right. Well, I'm going to get you on Satoshi Kon next.
Yeah, that sounds like
good luck with that one. I don't know.
Another tease for our water cooler episode coming later this week. So, all right, I think that's going to bring us to the end of today's episode of Slash Film Daily. You can find more about all of these stories that we mentioned on today's show at slashfilm.com and linked inside the show notes of this episode. This podcast is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find on the site. You can subscribe to the show on Apple, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all of the popular podcast apps, and send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns, and mailbag topics to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Make sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email on the air. Don't forget to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends, spread the word. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.